In this video, I'm going to talk to you about SPSS syntax. So syntax, or sometimes called code, is the code that makes SPSS work. So underlying any kind of computer program, it will have computer code, which people write and they change and various things like that. And one of the reasons I wanted to show you this is SPSS syntax is really useful to kind of save you time and save you energy, and also make sure that you've got a clear record of what you've done. And I've kind of subtitled this kind of talk as being the joy of SPSS syntax, the code that makes SPSS work and makes your life easier. So the main reasons you would use SPSS syntax is because it prevents you from duplicating actions. So if you have the ability to only run an analysis once and then change it, so for example, if you're doing your final year project or final year dissertation, or you're doing some other project and you want to test out to download the data from your questionnaire and then check that it all works, you can go and do that. You can go and run several pilot studies, download the data, run your analysis, save the code that SPSS automatically generates with your analysis, and then when it comes to running your final analysis, you can just open up the SPSS syntax, open up the SPSS code, and then just hit play, and then it will rerun your analysis for you. Okay. You can also keep records of your analysis, meaning that you can repeat the analysis really easily. You can describe the analysis you've undertaken. So there's been a movement within kind of open science to kind of say that all analysis should be replicatable. So in other words, another scientist should be able to take your work and go through exactly the same procedures you went through and find exactly the same results. Okay, you can also do more stuff in SPSS syntax than you can with the point and click menus. So it allows you to tweak it. So for example, recently I wanted to create a composite variable, but it was based on 3 different levels, and the SPSS point and click system doesn't allow you to do that. Okay, so here are some basic rules of SPSS syntax. Now I was tempted to put in a Fight Club reference here, but I decided against it. Rule number 1, so each command must start with a new line, and in practice it's often better to kind of leave several blank lines in order to break up your commands. And the reason why you do that is SPSS will ignore white space. Each command must end with a full stop, or if you're in America, and I'm not sure why you would be in America, the SPSS Survival Manual and SPSS for Psychologists refer them to as a period, but if you don't know what that is, it's a full stop which looks like that. Okay, you've got subcommands. So subcommands are normally the options that you kind of go and choose in the menus. And one of the great things is it makes it so much easier to kind of remember which options you ticked. And the way you demonstrate or show SPSS a subcommand is you do a /, and it's a good idea to start each subcommand on a new line. So you'll find that if you can make your code as readable as possible, or syntax as readable as possible, then you make your life much easier. Okay, you can split commands over several lines, and it's often safest to break it. Each subcommand has a new line. So the more kind of white space you can give yourself when working with SPSS syntax, the better. Okay, it is often useful to use something called a comment. So a comment allows you to describe what's happening in the syntax or happening in the code, so that when you come back to it, you can actually remember what you've done. Because obviously, at the time of generating the code, you could remember what you're doing, but then if you have sleep, go to work, have breakfast, you can often come back and think, oh, what did I actually do here? I can't remember. And if you use the comment function, which is just an asterisk and then a full stop at the end, then that allows you to have kind of little notes to yourself to say what you've done. Okay, and make sure you spell variable names correctly, because obviously if you're using code, if you're using syntax, SPSS becomes very confused very easily. So just check your spelling and stuff. And a couple of things to point out: if you actually want to generate a new syntax file, you can just go File, New, and then Syntax, and you want to make sure that the data set is connected with the right syntax file, and you do so here. So if you've got multiple data sets open, this is where you would change what data set this is applying to. Okay, so this is a syntax window, and in practice, while you can write code by scratch, and I do know people who do that, generally what you want to do is get the point and click menus to generate it for you. So let's start off by computing a variable, and let's say we want to compute total mastery. So what you would typically do is do what you would normally do when computing a variable. You'd enter a target name in here, and then you'd enter a numerical expression in here. So in other words, what I'm doing is I'm taking mastery 1, the question for mastery 1, the question for mastery 2, all the way up to mastery 7. I'm adding all those together, and I'm getting a new variable called total mastery. So typically, what I would do is I'd go and hit the OK button and go and run the analysis. But in this particular case, I'm going to hit paste. And you can see it generates a new syntax file. And if I just talk you through what it all does, you can see that it starts off with compute, because it's using the compute command. It's giving a new variable name, which is equals here. It's saying the name, which is total mastery, and it's saying equals, and then adding all the other ones up. And then what you see is it ends with execute, which basically just means run, and then full stop. So whenever you want a command to end, you always end it with a full stop. So if I go and hit the play button, you can see that it's now generated a new variable. Go over to here, which is called total mastery. Okay, so what you'll find is that most analysis in SPSS, if not all, have the ability to generate syntax. So let's go and say we want to go and run a regression. Go regression linear, and then I've just picked a load of random independent variables, and I'm predicting total perceived stress. Now let's pretend that I want to go through and select a load of statistics. So I've got estimates. So let's say I want confidence intervals and model fit, and then continue. And then plots, I'll go and select the plots. And I could save variables, I could go onto options, let's go exclude listwise. And then when I'm ready, instead of clicking OK, I'm going to click paste. And what you can see is this has now given me a regression, and it says regression. And it then uses the subcommand, which is the / to say what the various different options were. So you can start to see the power of SPSS syntax here, because you can start to see how you would, or how you could use it to kind of save your analysis. So earlier I touched on this idea of commenting. So if you want to comment something, what you typically do is you put an asterisk, and you can see that everything goes grey. So I'm going to say this is the regression used on, and then you could put the date to predict total perceived stress. And then what I do is then end with a full stop, and that tells SPSS that the comment runs from the asterisk to the full stop. If I wanted to comment this out though, I could click here, or if I want to comment something and I don't want to remember to type the asterisk, so I don't know, hello Chris, right? What you can do here is you can click on there, and that button there will comment or uncomment something. So if I go and click it again, you can see it gets rid of the asterisk, and you can see that that is it uncommented. So if you then want to go and save this, all you would do is go File, Save As, and let's call it syntax 3. And that way, let's close this down. When I come back to my analysis, having slept, had breakfast, been to work, got married, that kind of thing, then I can just go and double click here and it loads up the syntax. If I want to go and run the syntax, just hit the play button and then it reruns my regression. So the really good thing is, if you go onto here and provided you the names the same, you can go and edit the data. So I can go and, I don't know, delete this. And then if I go and rerun the analysis, it will run just the same. Now, if, for example, one of the variable names gets changed, so let's go and change one of the variable names. So let's say I go and change total perceived stress, and then go and rerun the analysis, it's going to error out. Okay, so let's go and rerun that. And you see that we get a warning message saying it can't find the variable name total perceived stress. If I go onto the syntax, you can see it gives me that error message again. If I go and add the 2 in front of there, you can see it now runs. Okay, so one of the key things is, whenever you're doing this, you need to spell the commands correctly, and you need to spell the correct names correctly, because if you don't, that can cause you issues. So hopefully that's been useful. If you've got any questions, please email me on c.tixon@newman.ac.uk.